Do not give up.
Hey, what is
Together,
going on, everybody,
we can
and
do
welcome to
Soar
Fantasia. For
alive.
today, we're going to be jumping into another session of Epic 7 out
For
today.
done blood.
Got some more first impressions for you guys. So, this time around, we're going to be taking a look at Saria. That's right, one of the oldest units in the game that has been kind of shown but never actually included as a playable character until now, and her animations are absolutely beautiful. So she is a mage. You see her staff. She's an elf. She has a tragic backstory, right? And beautiful animations, okay? So clearly, she is going to be someone that is going to be good against ice units, right? You're going to be using an earth unit against ice units. Congratulations, you've been played. Saria is an Earth Elemental Ranger of the Taurus star sign, as you can see. Yeah, with a staff. I know, you would think Soul Weaver, right? Or a mage, or something of that sort. No magic involved. Ranger. So, anyway, fitting for elves, but not fitting for the design necessarily. We'll get to the kit as well, so just stay tuned. But you can see right here, the Taurus star sign is boasts pretty decent attack, actually, pretty high attack, 1300, nothing to laugh at here. Speed is not great, it's just middling speed, not fast at all. You can't really build her extremely fast. She's slower than like a Faithless Lidica, for example, and her base speed is like 114, I believe. So yeah, you're not really going to go first with this unit, and she definitely needs another unit to help out, like an opener, right? She does have critical hit chance as well, which is pretty good, and she does team and self-imprint into more attack. And that could be good for various reasons, as we'll talk about soon. But just in case you're wondering, hey, what units have this star sign, right? What units can I compare her to? Well, if we take a look here, Fenris is one of the more common units I guess you can see now in PvE content. This is my PvE Fenris, and as you can see, you can build him as a pretty high damage boy, right? 4,500 attack here, max crit damage, although mine is base speed, and I don't think you really want that with Saria, but just something to keep in mind, you can build him quite powerful with damage. Another unit that you guys might be familiar with, who again is currently not really meta, but also boasts pretty high attack and stuff of the same star sign, is Commander Pavel. Mine is not built whatsoever, don't look at his stats, but he is another unit that if you're around for when he was used in cleave teams, pretty decent. I guess some people are experimenting with him right now because of his ability to ignore damage share, right? For Lady of the Scales, it's just not working out too well for those people, unfortunately. But yeah, Commander Pavel, pretty cool. But those are the only two units really that I'd say are common enough 5-star units that you can compare to Saria in terms of damage output, right? Because she is actually a damage dealer despite her appearance. So let's go ahead and jump forth to her skill preview, where we're going to discuss her kit, and of course afterwards we're also going to be discussing potential artifact that's going to come out, potential teams, what is her best in slot artifact, and other information. Links to timestamps are all down below for your convenience. For her first skill, Skill 2, the Guidance of Nature. At the start of an ally's extra turn, she gains 2 focus and increases combat readiness of the caster by 30%. After using a skill when focus is full, activates Wings of Liberation. So, Wings of Liberation will consume 5 focus, and attacks all enemies by releasing a spirit bird. Increases hit chance by 50% when using the skill, and is unaffected by elemental disadvantage. This is why I was joking about her element and her countering ice units at the start, because technically, and what a lot of people are claiming her to be, is a Setsuka counter, right? You are unaffected by elemental disadvantage, so you do not care if you're attacking fire units at all, as an earth unit herself, and you increase your hit chance by 50%, so if they have up to 50% evasion, you're still guaranteed to hit them, which is pretty cool, right? There are other units that also have this 50% hit chance. Heck, there's some units with 100% hit chance, like Watchashuri and Shaltir from the Overlord collab. But units with 50% hit chance include units like Eligos, for example. So she's gonna be kind of, sort of, like on that, level of fighting evasion units. You're not gonna be fighting you're not really going to be hitting units who have 100% evasion, like Afternoon So Flan. You're going to whittle it down to like a 50-50 shot with this, but you know, that's just something to keep in mind. She's not super reliable into like full evasion units, but she is good into units like Setsuko, who only have like about 50% evasion, right, including their kit and artifact and all that stuff. She is a unit that relies on focus, right, so she needs 5 focus to be able to rip this passive skill off. Another thing to note, if you're sealed, you don't get any focus, right? You don't have to rip this passive skill when you gain the 5 focus, so that's something to note. The good thing is you do increase your combat readiness by 30% when someone uses an extra turn. This reminds me of Robin. Robin also likes to gain her effects, the swift attack buff, right, when your ally has an extra turn, and there's plenty of units that give extra turns, mostly fast openers, right? So you're definitely going to be using her in an aggro or a cleave team. You have Renok, you have Conquer Lilius, you have who else was there? Lone Wolf Peyra is another one, right? So and Renok, you can't forget Renok, an extra turn unit right there that everyone is building super fast. So yeah, she has a lot of different ways that she can bridge, but she's definitely not a standalone unit, okay? Especially when it comes to this 5 focus here. The good thing is you can actually cheese the focus gain with Frieren, because Frieren would give you 3 focus at the start of your match, which is pretty cool. Or 2 focus, right? Yeah, 40%. So that's kind of nice. Yeah, so anyway, moving on here, we can see Saria, I believe in the demonstration, they pop off her passive, and boom, she just absolutely nukes everything. So she is definitely not a support unit, definitely going to be a damage dealer. But that doesn't mean she doesn't come without support skills. Her skill 3, Blossoming Hope, says, by kindling the light of hope, grants invincibility to all allies for 1 turn and increased attack for 2 turns. She is going to be a really strong bridge unit for these openers, right? If you have a Conqueror, Lilius, all this stuff that are setting up for you. Not only is she going to be able to S3 here and gain 3 focus from it, by the way, you're gaining 3 focus, so if someone takes an extra turn and she gains that 30% combat readiness, she gains 2 focus, you can rip her S3, she gains all these buffs for the team. Invincibility, attack buff for everybody, and then she bombards the opponents with light birds. Yeah, it's gonna be kind of crazy. If your opponent does survive, your other units coming up from that are gonna have full attack buffs and they're ready to rumble. Not only that, but you, as an anti-cleaver, cannot do anything to them because they have invincibility. So you need to strip the invincibility first before you are able to deal any damage to them. So they can bring really squishy, really powerful units to the fight and just kind of sit there and not care. So this makes them incredibly difficult to deal with. And yeah, you can see here, like, this is a pretty interesting team with the Watcher Shuri. It's not a really great showcase by Smallgate there, but yeah, you can see how these skills can actually work in theory, right? To synergize with a lot of different units. All right, her skill 1, the most basic skill, is Spirit Burst. You attack 2 enemies with a burst and has up to I believe a 75% chance, right, if you get the awakenings here, to dispel 1 buff. So you attack 2 people. It's kind of like Spectre Tenebria, where you target 2 people, right? One is whoever you're attacking, and the other one will be a random unit. And you can also soul burn this to increase your chance to dispel to 100%, and to ignore effect resistance. This actually is really important, because if you have a unit that's coming up after Saria that really needs to land debuffs or something, maybe you're trying to control your opponent or whatever by playing aggressively, she could actually set up for them as well. She gains a focus here, which is cool, but this is something to keep in mind. It only requires 10 souls as well, so it's not really expensive soul burn cost. But in the end, are you really gonna, if you're being aggressive, are you really gonna be using this? Probably not, but I can see it coming in handy, stripping revive buffs, immunity, stripping invincibility, right, immortality from the opponent, in this case with the Raz. I can see it coming in clutch. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into the artifact here. Saria's artifact is called Awakened Leaf, and if you get it, just a single copy, it says after using a non-attack skill, increases combat readiness of the caster and the ally in the back row, except for the caster, by 12%. This can only be activated every 2 turns. So her non-attack skill would obviously be her S3. So when you put up the invincibility and the attack buff on everybody, you will push herself and whoever's in the back row, right, up by 12%. Now at plus 15, this is going to be 18, and if you max limit break this, if you get it to plus 30, it's going to be up to 24%. Most people are probably going to get a single copy of this, so you're going to be pushing somebody up in the back row by 18%, which is actually a really significant amount. 18% combat readiness is nothing to laugh at, right? You can see when Ahmed and units like push up by 10%, it's kind of significant, right? It adds up, and 18% is nothing to laugh at all. So this is a pretty decent artifact, and it can potentially be used on other units as well, but it's definitely going to be okay for her here. Now, whether or not you're going to be running this or you're going to be running Guiding Light, it depends, right? It depends on if you're going to be using her really offensively, you're guaranteeing the first turn, you don't need Guiding Light. If you are running a slower team and you kind of want her as kind of there to kind of punish your opponent, maybe you're bringing her in a bruiser fight, which could work, and your opponent has a Setsuko or something on the other team with a little bit of evasion that's really annoying and just pesky, and you don't want to deal with it, Saria could be okay there with a Guiding Light instead, right? You don't have to necessarily snowball her into another unit to continue the bombardment against your opponent. This could work in slower teams too. So yeah, this is kind of an interesting artifact. I would love to see what other units people use with this artifact. I can see like Celeste, for example, definitely be able to use this, and she has one of the highest base speeds in the game while being a speed imprint too. She also takes extra turns. I guess technically you can run this artifact with Celeste and run Celeste on the same team as Saria. Interesting, huh? Alright, but yeah, Saria, guys, she is looking pretty good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to jump into a little preview into what we can potentially use as builds for her, and also we're going to talk about like best in slot artifacts. We kind of mentioned a couple of them earlier, but I want to be able to give you guys a visual of what the artifacts actually look like as well. So, yeah, you are able to summon for Saria starting November 6th, so in about a week from the day you're seeing this video, which is exciting. But now let's go ahead and jump back to the game, and we can take a look at some artifacts here. Now, Saria is a ranger, and rangers, again, are just blessed with so many good artifacts. And by that I mean they have Guiding Light. Guiding Light is just really good. Joking aside, Guiding Light's fantastic. It is not necessarily the best in slot, like I mentioned, if you're going to be playing fast, and you're guaranteeing first turn, you're going Rinok, right, you're taking an extra turn, you're pushing up the Saria goes, snowballs into somebody else, pushes them up, right, so on and so forth. This might not be the best thing that you want. You could, if you want extra hit chance, air-to-surface missile Misha is also an option. You get some extra hit chance here and extra crit damage, which is not bad. But you can obviously go for a more generic route if you want the max hit chance here and you don't have a maximum broken Misha. You can always go for the generic version, which is going to be... where is it? Symbol of Unity, which you can get in the guild shop, right? You can maximum break this, and when you're attacking, your hit chance increases by 20%, and your damage dealt increases by 16%, so that's also not bad. If you're wanting to fight units with like 70% evasion, think about like Remnant Violet with the 50% evasion and 20% from the artifact. That's like a decent way to go about this. Fighting a new kid Aiden, right? Having an extra hit chance artifact is definitely going to be useful for her in certain situations. I could definitely see that. But yeah, other than those two, we also have like kind of, you know, more generic like DPS options. You do, if you're fighting very specialized teams, something like Wall of Order could be okay as well to grant yourself a greater attack buff at the start of your turn. So that it might be a win more skill, I'm not sure, but it's also something that exists. If you want souls, if you're using her as a support unit, you want souls for the next unit that's coming after, not necessarily pushing them up. Maybe you have someone that when Saria uses a non-attack skill, they can push themselves up, right? Or when Saria uses the AoE attack against the opponent, they can push themselves up, like a Summertime at Saria, for example. Then You might want to go for Unseen Observer, where you get some extra souls, and you can use that to soul burn the next unit that comes after Saria. Could be pretty decent as an option, just something to keep in mind. But yeah, I would definitely say her artifact is probably one of the better ones to put in there if you want anything that has damage and hit chance. Misha is good, and of course the Symbol of Unity, right? I think those are probably going to be the top ones. If you think I'm missing something, let me know in the comments down below. Would love to check out some additional artifacts that might potentially combo well with her. But alright, with that being said though guys, let's go ahead and jump to the next phase here. We are going to take a look at a potential build we can put on Saria, yeah? So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of change this here to, let's just say we're changing it to a Symbol of Unity, right? We'll go for that and just use that as kind of a reference point, just in case you're doing some damage shenanigans here, okay? And we're gonna take off, there's no imprints on her for right now, we're gonna assume that you don't have any, and then let's go ahead and jump into a build that we can run. Before we actually take a look at the gears we can put on, let's take a look at the sets that you might want to consider here. Obviously, you can definitely run a speed set. Speed set gives you some pretty decent return on value. She's not horrible in terms of her base speed, but it is quite low. So speed set might not be the best value there. Destruction set is definitely where I see a lot of people going with this. You just want to max out your damage, and you don't necessarily want two set pieces like penetration. She's not really a single target attacker besides her skill 1. You're mainly trying to get that skill to passive up, right? So in that case, Torrent set is very good. You can push herself up. She's not really going to be too vulnerable here in the process, and after she uses her S3, well, everyone's invincible anyway, so the lack of HP from the Torrent set is not terrible. I can see people potentially running immunity on her, again, depending on the build, depending on the situation that you're running her on. Maybe you're using her just in arena, right? Maybe immunity is going to be good if your opponent's always outspeeding you and stuff. You just have like a slower Sea Lilius or slower opener that you're using that takes extra turns. It might be fine. Crit set, if you really want to max out your crit rate with her, that's also a potential option. If you're kind of struggling with gear and you really want to get her up for like arena and stuff, you're just starting out, destruction and crit set gives you a huge return on value for the gears. But yeah, this is pretty much what I see people running on her. I don't think you're gonna really see too many other sets being used here. I think these are the more optimal ones. Destruction and Torrent set being probably the best in slot for just overall damage output. But yeah, that is what we got going for us. So I'm going to demonstrate this with a destruction set and a torrent set, which I think is going to be the most used, right? So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. So here we go. This is a potential build you guys could go for with Destruction and Torrent set. Now, actually, depending on how fast your Saria is gonna determine where you want your speed to be. I'll show you the calculations for this in just a second as well, because I think it's really important to understand with 30% combat readiness how slow you can actually build her to cut your opponent, but you can definitely go for a faster build as well. Now, this is not super optimal here. You can see the weapon's pretty good, but you can modify crit rate into the helmet to max it out here. You can modify out the defense for more crit damage. You can modify the health here for more crit damage, and well, that's actually pretty decent here. And you can modify this health for flat attack. So this can actually output a lot more damage than it's actually looking like. And if you get self-imprints on her, she's gonna be hitting like a truck as well, right? But how did I land on this number of like 218? It's kind of in between where you want to be, depending on how fast your opener is and what kind of level you're playing at. The higher the level you're playing at, the faster your unit's gonna need to be in order to cut your opponent. So what do I mean by that? What do I mean by these speed calculations, right? Well, if you're assuming that your opener is like, let's say a 300 speed opener, running a 300 speed Ahmed or Rinok, right? Maybe you're just casually doing some arena and you're trying to outspeed your opponents, right? And 300 is good enough for you where you are. We'll multiply that by 0.7. That's 70%, 0.70, right? Your Saria needs to start out at 70% of your opener's combat readiness, because when she gets pushed 30%, she'll be at 100% and ready to take the turn. So when we do the math, we see that she needs a minimum of 210 speed in order to go right after your opener does, assuming your opponent doesn't have someone that cuts in and gains more combat readiness than you do, right? Now, when it goes up, depending on your opener's speed, let's say you have a 310 speed Rinnoc, which I have around that speed, and if I want to use her with Saria, well, 70% of that is now 217. Remember how my build had like 218 speed? Yeah, it's pretty much just perfect for like a 310 speed opener. If your opener is more than that, let's say you had a 320 speed unit, for one, you probably don't need me to do the calculations for you here. You probably are really good at the game, and congrats to you. I hate you, give me your speed gear. But if you really did need the calculations for it, 224, I did it for you. You're welcome. I'll take that speed tax now. Yeah, 224 speed. Now, keeping in mind that there are units that can have your combat readiness gains, things like Fire Politis and things like Abyssal Euphine out there, you gotta be a little bit careful, right? If you still want to cut under those situations, you gotta cut your combat readiness gains in half. 15% is what you're losing, okay? So when you do those calculations here, 300 speed times 0.85, right? Your Saria to cut would only gain 15% combat readiness. She needs to be 85% of your opener's speed. So you would need a 255 speed Saria if your opener is 300 speed. This is where it gets a little tricky, right? Fighting Fire Politis and fighting Abyssal Euphine, probably not really what you want to do with Saria unless your opponent is super slow and can't do anything to contest you anyway. Like, if you're just gonna jump up a little bit, it's still fine, it doesn't matter, then fantastic, right? So you can see how this can get out of hand. At 310 speed, at 85%, that is gonna give you, you need to be at over 260 speed here, 264 speed. And then last but not least, we got your 320 speed. I'm not even gonna do any calculations over this because it's really unrealistic. You're going to need a 272 speed Saria if you want to cut your opponent and they have, like, let's say an Abyssal Euphine trying to stop you, right? That's what you're going to need. And that's really difficult to pull off while having good damage numbers. So I would say stick to assuming you have 30% combat readiness gain somewhere around 215 to 225 speed is the general rule of thumb I can say where you're going to be pretty safe. So before I give you guys my final thoughts on Saria, let's go ahead and talk about potential teammates that you can run with her. The number one just that pops into your mind is gonna be Ahmed, right? One of the best cleave enablers in the game, and honestly, one of the only ways that cleave really plays nowadays, viably in RTA, at least from my experience. Ahmed here, really solid unit, takes an extra turn, will help Saria out with pushing her up in combat readiness, giving her an attack buff, a crit damage buff. She's gonna be really loaded before she activates her passive ability, right? So Ahmed's pretty solid here. You also have units like in the demonstration they showed Conqueror Lilius. Conqueror Lilius is pretty decent as well because she gives a vigor buff on her S3, and vigor increases your attack by 30%. This is incredibly good because it can stack with an attack buff. Conqueror Lilius being ban protected is also usually a pretty good sign that your opponent is about to cleave you. So in RTA, you know, the Argent Wave's Hua Young being used along with Saria is probably gonna start popping up here and there, right? Obviously you have your speedy demons like Rinnoc here that most people build pretty fast. She takes an extra turn. You can steal stats from your opponent's bulkier units and then make them easier for Saria to finish them off here. Pretty nice as well. She also does a ton of free splash damage against your opponent, whether or not they have mitigation or not, in the form of Maid Chloe or Fallen Cecilia or what have you. It doesn't really matter if Saria's going to come and carpet bomb the entire space, right? So Rinnoc is also pretty decent there. Obviously you have good support units that give combat readiness on top of your innate 30% from Saria herself, right? So you can go with Lone Wolf Pera, and her passive also helps you push up the team. At the end of every turn, you get 10% combat readiness, so she can S3, take an extra turn, Saria pushes up 30%, then 10% from the Para, and then after Para's extra turn, she'll use an S1. You can potentially defense break somebody, push up the Saria yet again, right? Setting her up to essentially sweep the entire opponent's side of the field. So yeah, a lot of good teammates here, and as I mentioned earlier, a little surprise unit that can work with her artifact is Celeste. Celeste is one of the fastest base speed units in the game, and she has a speed imprint of her own, right? She has 8 speed here, and she has 128 base speed, basically tied for Ice Para, I believe. The only units faster than her are Ron, Kayron, and Rinnock. Those are all three the highest base speed, 129, right? But the great thing about Celeste is that, one, she has a non-attack skill that grants her an extra turn, so it works with Saria here. But then also you have an S2 that can potentially push your opponent's combat readiness back, which is also really nice. Her being an opener for your team is pretty decent, and you can see competitive players using Celeste when they're speed contesting and also putting some of their most valuable speed gear on her as well. So I think she is a little bit of a secret sleeper agent when it comes to using Saria. So do try her out and let me know how it goes. I might test her out myself when using Saria, but that's going to be for a later showcase video. But anyway, with that being said, guys, let me know what other units you think are going to pair well with Saria. Obviously, there's like the Ice Para, there's Ice Ron, there's a lot of fast units that take these extra turns, right? But they're just not really as viable in today's day and age. But yeah, I think Saria is going to be interesting. I don't know if she is necessarily going to be like used just to counter Setsuka. I think the extra hit chance is valuable, but the value from her can definitely come in other forms of damage, right? Of just being able to act as a support unit with the invincibility and attack buff for the team. And you can, I think, run her in slower team comps as well. Obviously, probably not as well in RTA, but you can run her in slower team comps in Arena and such too, right? If you're going against really slow teams or you have ways to counteract your opponent's openers, you don't necessarily need her to go right away. But you see the insane damage that they're showcasing here. People are saying that, you know, the showcase doesn't show Bossarunka, doesn't show, or sorry, it does show Bossarunka, but it doesn't show, what is it called, Lady of the Scales, right? It doesn't show with mitigation on the other team. And obviously with mitigation on the other team, you're gonna suffer. Like, it doesn't matter how much damage you do, unless you ignore damage share, your damage is gonna suffer. It wouldn't surprise me if in the future we get a artifact or a unit that's released that has a buff or something, maybe that it helps ignore damage share. That might be something cool to see, but anyway, until that happens, guys, with that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.